Okay, what's going on, people? I want to show you today how to go from downloading a model off Sketchfab to getting it in the game 4x4 Evolution 2. So I was just browsing models over here on Sketchfab and I found this person, Ashkelon, and they have 3D scans of all sorts of stuff, which looks cool and interesting to get in the game. So one that I decided to work on that I thought was cool. I like this old Ford Transit. I'm going to come back to this guy eventually. Maybe the pickup too. I'm not sure where this is from. Maybe Russia. I don't know. But I saw this Toyota Tercel and thought it would be great to get in the game. Super funny. So open it up. I don't see a price up here. I'm happy. Notice no transparency on the windows and stuff, but the tires are beautiful. So they've been 3D scanned from somewhere and they would be cool to get into. I'm going to focus on the body for the moment. I scroll down a bit and notice I can download this thing for free. So the license is attribution. I just have to say, hey, thanks, Ashkelon. I used your model. I modified it. I got it into this game. Check out this guy's stuff here. I believe that's all we have to do. So we download his model. What's the good format? I chose USDZ because I could import that into Blender, which is what I use. So we download this guy. Boom, the Tercel shows up in my downloads folder and we get to work. So let's open up Blender and see if we can get it in here. We don't need lighting or all this stuff to deal with 4x4 Evo stuff, so I usually just select all this stuff and delete it. And then we want to import a file. That thing was USDZ. So let's see, is this what I'm looking for? USD star. Boom. Open it up, go to the downloads. There's the Toyota Tercel right there. So we open this guy up and where is it? Oh, the wheels are huge. I zoom way out. There it is. Awesome. If you go up here, you can see it textured. It's very nice. So it comes textured and everything. Deselecting stuff, click off here. You can select a wheel. We're not going to need the wheels because we're just interested in the body. So we'll delete all the wheels out of here. We can come back to those eventually if we want. Boom. So there's our Tercel ready to get into 4x4 Evolution. All right. The thing which makes it possible to get this model into 4x4 Evolution is this little export add-on. So we can export into 4x4 Evolution here thanks to Dummies Man. You can get Dummies Man's tool at 4x4evolution.net. So if you go to 4x4evolution.net, boom, you end up here. You go look at your modification tools, go to modding tools. Here's the Blender SMF importer exporter by Dummies Man. This thing is now fully open source. Thanks, Dummies Man. Oh, this is not the one I want. I'm going to go back here. If you go to the original SMF import directory, it tells you how to install everything. You open Blender, hit Edit Preferences, look for the add-ons, and install this thing. There's a zip to download. Dummies Man updated it recently so that it works with Blender 4. And it does everything you need. You can import your 4x4 EVO models in, export them out, and so on. So we'll talk about that. This is where you get it. Just to say quickly, another tool that we will need is POTI by Dummiesman. And this tool you just download from here. It's not open source yet, but it's on its way. So you download POTI. We will come to that at some point. So going back to Blender here, we've got this thing. We can export it out as a 4x4 EVO model. But before we do that, it will be important to know what type of files we're dealing with and know what making a truck even looks like. So we fire up Dummiesman's tool for this. Go into my Monster Truck Madness tool stuff here. This is where I have my POTI. It's on an external drive. I'm going to open up POTI by Dummiesman, and I'll open some recent file here. So for example, the truck that I'm going to use to sort of base everything off here to get this particular model we're looking at in the game is this, I think it's a Ford Escort, but WRC vehicle. I don't know what year it's from. It's made by this guy called Spinner. And there are like sort of 3 core components that go with any truck. You have your truck file, which is a text file basically, and it contains all the ingredients of your truck. So it tells all the performance, it tells where to look for the model that your stuff is based on, and so on and so forth. We will look at one of these truck files soon. You have your model stuff. So EVO likes SMF format, which I think was a proprietary format developed by Terminal Reality for their games. So I'm not sure if it's used anywhere else, but this is why you need Dummiesman's import tool, which I already have installed here in my stuff. And then you have your art. TIFF files, we all know, and raw files, I believe we all know too. We won't deal with the raw files here. We will deal with the TIFF files in order to take the textures that came with this car and turn them into EVO textures. So, okay, what do we do? With this POTI tool, I recommend you, think about a car that you like in 4x4 Evolution. If you've already used custom cars or whatever, and you want to have performance similar to something you've driven, that's a good place to start. I really like the way this Ford Escort drives. I like the way that Spinner tuned it. So I'm going to use his truck file as a basis for my car here. And it just helps to export all of this stuff so that you can kind of learn from the files that are here. That's what I did. I exported, just like extract all this stuff. It looks like a zip file. You extract all these folders, you start looking through the files, and you just kind of, make sense out of what you need to do. Okay, so how do you extract all this stuff? You go save all. No, what do I want to do? I want to go boom, boom, export everything. So if I click here on the top thing, I right click, I click export. I go to my drive that I'm doing all my stuff in. I have a Blender, whoop, that's my EVO folder. I have my Blender stuff, and I have various things that I've extracted and various things I'm working on. I chose the Ford WRC folder as my thing. You hit OK, and it'll extract all this stuff with its corresponding directories into the folder you select. So click OK. I'm clicking cancel, but you click OK. It'll extract all the stuff for you, and then you can start to look at it. Okay. What's the point of that? The model here, we have no idea if the size is right for the game. So we need to compare it to something that's already in the game to get it sized up right, so that we can get it in the game. That's our goal. For size, what do? I am going to import 4x4 evolution thing. I'm going to go where I stored all that stuff. So that was in that Blender stuff folder. Ford WRC is where we extracted our stuff. The model is what we want to import. And the Ford is what we want to import. These things turn out to be tires. Talk about those eventually. Okay, so I import it and I notice I don't see anything. You can kind of like see down here, very small something. So since I don't see anything huge, I zoom out, nothing. I'm going to zoom in and look at this tiny car. So small. So that's what we have to do with our gigantic model. We've got to resize it down so that we match the size of some car that's already in the game. To do so, we use the size tool. Now let's move, scale. And we want to size all the dimensions. So you just grab in the circle, not on any of these particular axes, and shrink it. All right. We keep zooming in. We'll shrink it some more, zoom in some more. Let's move it down a bit. Here, you do want to use an axis. I'm going to move down in the up direction. We got to keep shrinking. So we shrink more, zoom more, shrink more. Okay, now we're getting close. So let's move this guy down. And it looks like the model here is more or less sitting on the ground. So we can take our guy, make it sit on the ground as best as we can. And then we can take our guy and scale it down until it's about the size of the model we have here. Okay, so notice as I move here, excuse me, the top of the roof starts to go through. So I'm gonna let it come through a little bit. Leave it like that. The bottom is all through. We can see it. How do the wheel wells match up here? All right. So boom, here's the wheel wells of the thing we imported. Here's the wheel wells of what we're dealing with. Looks like we should scoot back a bit. So selecting this guy, we're going to scoot him back a bit. So I'm grabbing the direction to scoot, and I just try and match whichever wheels I want to match up. I, from experience, am choosing to match up the front wheels and choosing to match up basically the front of the cars, because the driver is positioned according to the front of the car. The driver is the little guy that's in the game. So you wanna line up the front as best as possible, even if you don't get the wheel wells great. Better to line up the front window, I think. I think the scale here looks pretty good. The wheel wells are pretty close to matching. Notice the wheel well of the imported car is a little in front of the wheel, like the rear wheel well of the model we're trying to get in the game. So we'll notice that. We'll have to deal with adjusting the wheels eventually. But for now, we've got the size right. We've got the vehicle essentially in the correct position. I'm sure that there must be some X and Y coordinates here that would let us see where the front of the car is and everything. I've just compare size with things that are already in the game, and I don't even think about it. So we got our guy scaled to the appropriate size. We can get rid of all the other stuff unless we think it's useful. to check textures and everything like that. But I'll talk about all that stuff and hopefully it'll work. So let me see if I can. Fortunately, hiding the scene isn't good enough. Is hiding this guy good enough? Yes. So really, we want to drag this guy out of the scene and maybe move it down. I don't know. I don't know where we can put it. I suppose we could select it, copy it, and just make a new instance if we wanted. All right, an important note. 4x4 Evo 2 does care about the names of the pieces of your model. So body is an allowed name. I can't hide this thing. All right, that works. So body is an allowed name, can be capital or not. Any change in capitalization you make, capital B, capital O, capital D, capital Y, those are acceptable different names of body parts. So you could have all lowercase, and you can put the capitals wherever you want. So what is that? 2 to the 4th power is 16? 16 things to choose from for your body. Same for the bumper, except even more choices. I noticed there's an extra R on the end. That's something. Same for the glass. We'll eventually have glass and stuff in our model and so on. So there are some allowable part names. You can learn those just by importing various vehicles that already exist into Blender. Look at the names. That's what you want to name your stuff when you go to export it into the game. Okay, so cool. Let me see. Let's see if we can add all this stuff to a new collection and hide it away. All right, so that's gone. Let's get this guy back. See, this thing's gonna want to be called body. That's our model. And maybe we want to make a new collection and drag that in there. I don't know. Let's see if it'll let us drag it into this collection. Hey, yes it did. And then all the rest of this stuff I think we can delete. There is some kind of like random trash that came out of the 3D scan. Oh, I see. Weird. Oh. So this is here, and I don't know what this is. Let's see what happens if we delete it. All right. Anyway, annoying stuff. What can I say? As long as you find the part you want, and I don't know if there's an easier way to do this. Let me see. Rename active object. Okay, this is the good way to name it. Name the thing you want. Find the things in your scene that you want to keep. Name them things that 4x4 Evolution knows. When you export them, Dummies Man's tool will, I think, get rid of all the unnecessary parts. All right, so we got our body here. Let's get rid of all this junk coming from the Ford. Boom. And we want to save this as some kind of blend file. So I'm going to save it as, I don't know, Toyota Tercel is what this thing is. So Toy Tercel Blender file, save it up. There you go. It's tempting to export it out, but let's look quickly at the material stuff. So to get to the materials of this thing, come up to the top corner, open up another window, go here, go to your shader editor, and look at this. Wow, look at all these materials. Oh my gosh. We should compare with materials from something else, but all we need at the end of the day is the base color by itself. Anything attached to this we can delete. So yeah, we need a base color. We need a normal, which is going to give us our, here we go. The normal is going to give us all of our transparency information. And then I think we need a metallic as well. And how do you learn what of these things you need? You look at an already existing model, import it with Dummies-Man's tool, look at this section, the shader editor of your vehicle. Do note that you need to select something here to see stuff in the shader editor. And then if you want to see the texture associated with this stuff, click here. I go to the base color one. That's the good place to start for what we're going to do here. And what is this texture it's using? It's using the LPT base color JPG. It still has all the Ford stuff from when we imported the Ford thing. Those won't be there normally. So yeah, looks like we can save all sorts of stuff out of here. All right. Okay, so we are gonna need to change the texture format from JPG to TIF. That's what 4x4 Evolution likes. So we can do that in just a sec. We don't want to change this, but what we want to do is unpack the item. We want to write the file to the original location. So wherever this thing is saved, we will write the file and we'll go boom, boom, and the thing gets saved. Tells us down here where it is. So it's saved somewhere into the Blender folder. There it is. It's in my app data, my local stuff, yada yada. So you have to go kind of search for it. Okay, so we'll come back to that in just a minute. All right, so we just saved the texture file of this car. It's in this random horrible app data directory. How do we get to this file so that we can start to do what we want with it? Right click on it in the Blender file manager. Look for external. You can open folder and boom, there is your JPG texture. Okay, so we're gonna wanna copy this somewhere. I am gonna take it to my Blender stuff, which is where I'm doing all my editing. So I drag it over here, it's gonna copy to Blender stuff, boom. Move over here, I have a bunch of junk in here, and we are working on a Toyota Celica. So what I wanna do is, I'm gonna make a new folder, and I'm gonna call it, oops, not a Celica, but a Tercel, okay. Boom, there's my folder. Here is the JPG I just found. Move it in there. We're gonna need an art folder. So let's see, new folder, art, boom, boom. And as we saw, we need art. We need another folder, models. This is where we will save our SMF files. And we need another folder, truck, or truck, I believe. This is where our truck files will go. Okay, so in the models, there's nothing. In the truck files, there's nothing. In the art, we have this JPG file. We're gonna open this thing up with GIMP and save it up in the TIFF format we need. So we need two different files for the game to be able to understand our stuff. The first one is, maybe we should make copies of this thing, but The first one is a TIFF file that is sort of like the bump map of this vehicle. The ones, I don't know. So let's make that first, and then we can make the other one next. So in order to make a bump map, I go to run command, I type in bump. There is a bump map plugin. I think it's one of the filters. It says preview, but I don't see anything when we do it. Let's click OK and see what happens. Nothing. Yeah, nothing. Let's try it again. Bump. There is a way to get the bump going here. What did I do? What did I do before? Ah, you need to click on what layer you want here to bumpify. Okay. Let's change our depth. Look at that. So if you want it to be really nasty looking, what did I just do here to get this to turn on? You need to say what your input is. So selecting on this layer here is what we're dealing with. Probably we don't want it to be like this gnarly. You know, you can be nothing, or it can sort of get some texture to it. The texture that came with the car does have some stuff. Does have some, you know, like features of damage and everything like that, which is part of what we like about this car. So you can decide how much you want to accentuate all of that. And I mean, making this depth map and everything doesn't make too much of a difference. You just need the bump texture, and it's a TIFF RGB file. So I'm adding all this extra depth and everything. You can change where the light is shining, depend on how you want all your stuff to look. It doesn't really matter. So, okay. I made my bump map here. I have red, green, and blue channels. I can add an alpha channel to this. I think we needed one. I don't remember. And then I'm just going to export this thing as a TIFF. So export as LT blah blah blah. You got to select your file extension, scroll down to the bottom where you find TIFF. Here it is. Export. You don't want it compressed or anything. None of these things matter as far as I can tell. So I export my bump TIFF file. Okay, that finished. Boom, that's done. So we need our bump file. I should have given that a different name. Let me see here. So we found our TIFF file here. The one that we just made, which is RGB, we're going to call sub bump. All right, so that's your like big guy. The other thing we need to do with this thing is it should be 512 by 512. So you got to go image, scale, and it's 2048 right now. Let's make it 512. That's what the game wants. Scale it up. I should have scaled first and then bumped later. That's the better practice. Oops. Scale first, bump later. Whatever. We're going to save this thing again. Export as this bump TIFF. Let's replace it. Export it. All right, cool. So there's our bump map. Boom. You've got your guy here. You've got your channels and everything as you need, as far as I remember. And let's do this again. So close, discard. Let's open again the JPG we just had. So here we go. And maybe it's good practice just to Control A, copy this thing, Control Shift V, work with a new file. This one can be your bump file, Control-Shift-V. This one can be your other file. So you see we have three things going. The JPG was the original you don't want to mess with. Your bump file we just did. Save it up. This guy right here is going to be the final one. We need to scale this guy. So scale him back down to 512. Always double check that. Boom. Zoom in. And the one that's not your bump file, so the one that's your main color file, is going to be an indexed color type. So notice, oh, we do have an alpha channel here. That's cool. In order to make an index type, we go image mode indexed. You want a 256 color palette, so that is 8-bit. 2 to the 8th is 256. None of the other stuff matters. It should all be selected like this by default for you. Click convert. There you go. Looking in the channels, we have an index channel, we have an alpha channel. Those will be important later because transparency we do want. But for just getting the thing in the game, you need your one file that is indexed. That's your main color file. And then you need the other file that is RGB. That's your TIFF file. So this guy here, let's export it. This one's not going to be named bump. It's going to be named that without the bump. So export. Not sure what's happening. We choose TIFF. Boom. Let's look in the folder and see if it's already there. No. What in the world is going on here? Okay, let's try again. Export it. Here we go. Export. We want to call it boom without the bump. Boom. Export. No. Why? Don't you see the name? Okay. Go check your folder. Did you do the right thing? If you don't mess with that JPG, you're going to be happy. Go to Blender, go to the directory we're working in, go to the art. All right. We have the TIFF file here, 512 by 512, 500 kilobytes. Nice. That's the one that should be indexed, 256 colors. The bump file is the TIFF file that should be RGB. Notice it's a megabyte. So like double the size, and we'll need transparency in both of these files and everything like that eventually, but not just to get it in the game. So the important thing is the bump file is RGB. The base color guy, like your main color file, is indexed 256 colors. So indexed 8-bit. So we got those guys now. We are ready to use Dummiesman's tool to export our stuff, and hopefully it will be all set. I'll show you how to check. All right, so that was GIMP. We're now moving back to Blender. Here's our guy. Let's export with Dummiesman's tool and see what happens. I'm not sure if here we can already change the texture. Let's look. Open. Let's go to our Blender stuff, to our terse cell, to our art, to our base color. Interesting. We went from like a giant texture to a very small one, maybe a bad idea. So let's Control-Z that for now. Let's use Dummiesman's tool to get this guy in the game, and then we'll see what it looks like. So here's what all the color information looks like for the thing we downloaded online. Let's export this guy and see what it looks like when we open it back up. So export it as SMF, which is the 4x4 Evo. Use V1 materials. You have to check this if you're doing 4x4 Evo 2 stuff. We are going into the, oh, this is not where I want to be. That's where I've done more work on this same model. I thought it was a Celica. It's a Tercel. Okay, so Blender, Tercel, models. Let's call it Toy Tercel. So it's automatically naming this based on what we had named the Blender file. We export this guy, and we can also save up our Blender file just for good measure. And now we go File, New, General, clear everything out. Let's open Dummies Man stuff and see what it did to our work we've done so far. So I always delete all this junk. File, import. Let's go into our Blender folder. You can save a folder up here by clicking plus and finding, the folder you want. I think if you're on a folder here, you can add it in. Okay, so Blender stuff, Tercel, model, boom. Here we go. There it is. Yay. Let's see what the textures look like. Are there textures? Looks like. And how they look insane, right? Like, what is this? That looks nothing like what I had before. Unfortunately, I think because, do I know why? I don't think I know. But I'll show you how to check everything out. So you open up the same stuff, select your model as before. This appears like we can just delete. Notice we have our body here, which is what we want. Body is important. Okay. Over here, we want to check the shader stuff. And let's see what Dummies Man has for us. All right. So Dummies Man has the color, which is good. And this should be the TIFF file. The way you can check this is come down to your materials over here. Boom. You can preview it. Boom. There's kind of the stuff that you want. The thing that we're missing here is the normal layer. So this happens usually. If you export your model, or when I've done this so far, if you export this guy's models, you're going to have your color stuff, but you're going to be missing your normal. So right click in here, don't select anything, right click inside the main part, and you need to add in your vector normal map. So add in your normal map, boom. This guy is here, we're going to connect it to the normal, and then we need to add in a texture here. Nope. So to get the color part that we need, you go add, so select nothing, right click in here, add texture, image texture, boom, boom. And this guy we will connect to that guy, the two color guys go together, boom. And then we're going to open up a guy. We're going to go to our Blender stuff where we saved our bump file. That's the one that comes in this normal map. All right, so now we have a bump file. Notice it did change the way our vehicle looks. Cool. These are the crucial ingredients. Dummies Man's tool already includes the base color and the alpha. The base color texture, zooming in here, the base color texture is coming from that TIFF that we made. I think Blender itself sort of makes instances of the base color texture. So looking at the alpha, we have an instance 01 or 02 here. Okay, so I'm leaving it how it was. And then in the normal world where we're going to mess with our bump map, we need the bump texture here. All right. So those are the ingredients for any piece of model that you have that you want to take into the game. If we select the one that's for the main color up here, so you click on it and you go into your UV editor, there's nothing here. It may take time to load, I don't know. How do you get it to load automatically? Over here in this window, you hit tab. That puts you in edit mode. You can see all the polygons. You hit A, that selects everything. And now you see over here in the UV editor how everything is mapped onto this file. Blender's a bit crazy with this file. Let's select nothing again. All right, that's what we see. For whatever reason, in the color file, we only see this top left corner. I'm not sure. Maybe because it's indexed. I don't exactly know. So how do you see the actual mapping or change the actual mapping if you want to play with it? You got to go back to your shader editor and select down here. If you're in the normal direction, that's using that bigger RGB file, which Blender likes better. And you go back to your UV editor, you see the texture as you expect to see it. Over here, if we press A again, we'll see everything mapped as we want it to be. So that's great. We don't need to do anything over here. All the mapping and everything is preserved. So we should be ready to get this thing into the game if we are lucky. So tab again takes you out of edit mode over here. And then this window was just for checking your materials and stuff. So now that we've got this all set, now that our shader editor is looking good for all this stuff and has the essential pieces color coming from that indexed image, like I said, this thing is instantiated, I think, from the color file. And then this thing we had to add in the normal. So again, we added a vector normal map. So we added that thing in, that was this, and then we added in a texture, image texture, that was this, and we connected those together. This one right here, connected to the normal, comes from the bump map. Once you have those essential ingredients, you can export this thing again over that thing you just imported. So let's export this guy using 4x4 Evolution, Dummies Men's Tool. Again, don't forget to check this. It will mess everything up if you don't. Check your use V1 materials. You're still trying to save over the model you just did, so save over your Tercel you just imported. Bam. You can also go File, Save As, save over your Tercel Blender file, because now this thing should be good to go like you want it. It doesn't look great in here, but that's okay. We'll see how it looks in the game. The file you can trust for the textures here is the one coming from the bump here. So as you see. All right, so cool. Here we go. We have our model that we want. What do we do next? So we resize the thing. We got the textures straightened out how we want. How do we build something out of this? All right, so I open up my folder here where my Tercel stuff is. I still don't have a truck file. Okay. As I said before, I am gonna use this Ford that I like to get the truck file. So right click on that. I'm gonna open in a new window so I can play with all these things sort of at the same time. This WRC car, this Escort, does have its own truck file. You can open this thing, open with Notepad. It'll ask you what you want to open it with. Open it up. It's just a text file. And you'll have to go through and rename all this stuff. All right. So before we deal with that, Uh, I am going to, I have my Ford stuff opened here. I'm going to open up my Tercel folder, open up my truck folder. I'm going to copy this bad boy in there. Boop. I don't want to move it. I want to copy it. So I'm holding Control to drag it over. So it copies over here. I'm going to rename it already Toy Tercel. Boom. And then I am going to open that up and mess with that. So this guy is no longer relevant to me. I should have left that open. Over here, what's the truck name? Toyota. Tercel, you can call this, Rudy's Toyota, Tercel, whatever you want here. The truck make, I think, is Toyota. Or, choose whatever truck make you want in here. For example, in career, Infiniti has the lease vehicles, so a lot of people choose that. If you're going to have a career vehicle, we are going to have a custom. So you find that here. That Ford vehicle was something you buy in career. It costs $0, which is nice. You can also put negative dollars here, negative 100,000, and that pays people money to drive your car. Whatever you want. 0 is fine. Change this to custom. I don't know if the C needs to be lowercase or uppercase. Let's try lower. And then the truck model, this is a Tercel. Let's call it WRC2. All right. The year doesn't matter. Like a lot of these stats don't matter. There's a text file I can share that has this info. Thanks Wheel Smoke for sharing that with me. So I think this thing's like a 1987 or something. So that doesn't matter. I'm not going to change anything else almost. The only other essential ingredient we need to change is you scroll down. It asks for the truck model base name. In the case of that Escort, it was Ford. For us, we are calling our SMF file Toy Tercel. The tire model base name, see this here? XLS12. That's the tire that comes with that Ford. So we're going to need to incorporate that here. We don't change that, and everything else we don't care about. We like the way that Ford drove, so we're stealing all of its performance by putting our information into this file. The only thing we're changing is this name and type information, and then we need to point it to our model's base name. So we save this thing, file save, exit. All right, so now we have a truck file. We have a Tercel file, like that's our model. We have our art stuff, good. What are we missing? Let's compare back with our Ford. So it has a truck file, we got that. Going to the models, I see these tires, okay. So the tires, whoops. The tires were things we saw that showed up in the truck file. So we'll want to copy those over. So let me open this in a new window. Let me open my Tercel, open my models. I have my Tercel here. Boom, boom. I'm going to copy the models over. Don't forget to hold Control. All right, so my tires are in here now. I am going to copy the textures for those because every model comes with textures as well. So tires, oh, they're SMFs, but they happen to come with raw image files. So copy those into the art folder. Again, the tire image guys are going into the art folder. Okay, we're very close. The final thing we're missing is in the models, we have the tires. Here's the main Ford thing. What's Ford 0? Well, that's supposed to be like the low poly version of your model. So back in the day when computers were not as powerful as they are now, you needed some low poly version, or when it zooms out, the camera angle zooms out, it would replace everything with the low poly version. When it zooms in, it would do the high poly version again and stuff to save resources. We don't care about this now. For us, the low poly model will be a copy of the high poly model, but we do have to do one thing. We have to rename the pieces with L's at the end. So back in Blender here, here's our guy that we exported to Dummies Man stuff. We go over here. We change this to body L. We now have a low resolution body part. The thing to do in the game, like all of the trucks from the game, also change their texture to low resolution or lower resolution textures. So we have 512 by 512 stuff. The low res guys have 256 by 256. We don't care. We don't have to do anything with that. We just need to put this L here. We go File, Export, 4x4 Evolution. We still need the V1 materials. We're going to go Tercel, but we're going to add a 0. All right. So every part you have in your vehicle, except for lights, you want to have in your low-res vehicle with a capital L at the end. So boom, export that puppy. And we should be good to go to get this thing in the game. We're very close, at least, if we're lucky. Okay. So finally, there are 2 different ways to get this thing in the game. We can use this potty tool. So I'm going to close this thing that we were looking at the Ford stuff in. We can use the potty tool to build a pod. We can mount it in the game using the pod INI. Or, so we can do this. Or let's see if this will work for us. Here's all our Tercel stuff. We can, in a separate folder, go to your 4x4 Evo game directory where your game is installed, where you want to try this car, and just copy these folders over here. So the reason I have built pods in the past and mounted them is because I didn't know better, and then secondly because I was hoping to get better error messages out of the deal. But if the truck doesn't run, we'll know there's some issue and we'll troubleshoot there. So, yeah, we got our textures, our tire textures, and our car textures. We have our models. Got the main model, the low-res model. We have the tires, and then we have our truck file. Everything should be set. Let's see if we did it right. So we take these folders, drag them over. I'm going to move them to the 4x4 Evo folder. I don't want to move them. I'm going to copy them. So I'm holding Control. Boom. I now have art, model, truck folders in here. We're going to fire up the game and see what happens. So here we go. You don't have to do any custom anything, just run the game. I may have needed to unmount the pod first. Let's see. I think though that the truck file takes precedence over whatever I have mounted. So Snake River Canyon, maybe my favorite team death track. Download it from Oops's site, oopstracks.com. It's amazing. And then let's see. Scrolling down, haha, so Celica is the thing I've been working on, which is very similar to what we're doing now. The Tercel is the one we just made. It shows up in the menu because we put those files where they should go. Will it load for us? Hey! Oh, interesting. Why is all this stuff transparent? I think it's because I have that other car mounted already, and the textures might have the same file name. But we got it in the game. Okay, let's go unmount that pod quickly and see what happens. So. That Ford car is so ridiculously fast. It's ridiculous. It's incredible. So much fun to drive. And steers and handles really good too. So good job, Spinner. All right. I made a crucial mistake. The crucial mistake is if you have some pod mounted already in your pod INI here, and it has files within it that have the same names as files you're using, the pod may interact with the stuff you're doing. So I have the perfect number of pods right now. I'm going to unmount this guy. So just delete it from your list. Delete. Come back up. Go down one. Hit save. Okay. You probably don't have to do this step. I have some overlapping files. So get out of here. Go back to 4x4 Evo. Let's see what we've got going here. All right. Snake River Canyon again. The Tercel is still there. Yay. Let's go race and see what it looks like. Hey, hey. Okay. Just as we were expecting. Here I'm in the... Look how fast this thing is. Hilarious. Fastest Tercel you ever saw. Oh yeah. Woo! Alright. So notice the windows in the one that we just worked on together are not transparent. I haven't added any of that info or anything yet. That's a whole nother video in itself. But we got it in the game. Let's pull over here. Switch the view so that we can spin around. And look at that thing. Looks great. Yay. All right, so you see, everything is as we expect. I think, let's see, set a chase far. Let's see if we can even chase near. Yeah, so everything's as we expect. Plus and minus control your up and down in the game, in case you weren't onto that. These bushes next to me are great. And yeah, there you go. So there is a little driver guy inside of there. I had repositioned him in that Ford car because the original version had him like sitting out in front of the car. So now he's in the car, and we got this model in the game, which is what we wanted. Looking at the wheels, I could probably use or move the front wheels back a smidge. I could definitely move the back wheels back. This car is super lowered. So potentially we can move the model up and forward a smidge. And you know, you mess around with that stuff. That's sort of the fine-tuning details. But getting the model in the game is like one of the main difficulties. The key elements were exporting the model with Dummiesman's tool, so saving it as SMF in the first place, and getting the textures straight. So you need the one TIFF file, which is index 256 colors. That's your main color map. You need the other TIFF file, which is your bump map, that is full RGB and handles transparency and the way the game sees like how bumpy all the textures are. Beyond that, you edit the truck file, you tell it your model name, You save everything with Dummies Man's Tool, and look at that. We've got this car in the game. So cool. So, if this was helpful to you, please give me a like. Please leave me a comment. If you have any questions, happy to hear it. On 4x4evolution.net, there's a Discord server that we are all on, and talking about the game pretty regularly. So, hope to see you over there. Thanks for watching. More to come eventually. Ciao.